Welcome to Notable Approvals. I'm attorney Amanda Schaefer. It's been a little while since I have done one of these, and I assure you it is not because the approvals haven't been rolling in. It's because we have been super, super busy, and I just haven't had the time. But I did want to get to the notable approval today because it's actually a very interesting one. So let's first do a few announcements and then we'll get to it. So as I always say at the beginning, don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram, wherever you're watching from. And if you find this video to be helpful or know somebody who may find it helpful, please click the share button so that others can view it as well. And if you go to our social media pages, you'll see lots of other videos like this and other useful information that I recommend that everyone check out. So now let's get to our case today. So case today is about a client who is a native and citizen of the Ivory Coast. He first entered the U.S. in March 2015 with a B1 visitor visa, and he married a U.S. citizen in April of 2016. Unfortunately, about 6 months later, she passed away. And that's when this client first came to us, not right when she passed away, but when he met his second future wife, because he wanted to get married, and he came to us and he brought us the death certificate. Because if you're married one time and then you want to get married another time, no matter what, and I've talked about this in other cases before where there's been issues where someone thought they were divorced and wasn't. This is not that. This is slightly different, and that's why I find this one to be pretty interesting. But in this case, when he brought us the death certificate, we look at it, and it always says like spouse's name. This person died in New York. Most death certificates, I believe, do say this, but it said spouse's name at time of death, and it had somebody else's name. And we said, who is this person? And our client, he didn't know who this guy was, but this guy was the one who filled it out. It was very strange. I had never seen someone else claim to be the spouse on someone's death certificate, especially when the marriage was, not too much earlier, and they both came over together from the Ivory Coast. So we said to him, well, obviously you can't get divorced. She passed away. Here's the problem. If we take this death certificate and we submit it with your marriage petition, and you get married, but you can get remarried, that's not the problem. But if you get remarried and then we show USCIS this death certificate, they're going to ask the same question that we're asking. Who is this other person on your death certificate? Or who is this spouse? Why aren't you the named spouse? And even if there's no question about your current marriage, USCIS can always look back at a previous marriage and question if that was a legitimate marriage. And even if the person doesn't file for you, it can create problems. So I say this, and I can't stress this enough, that you should always, even when you think everything is like 100% straightforward, easy, no red flags, nothing, you should consult with an attorney. And that's because you might not have thought it mattered whose name was on the death certificate. And I can tell you it does. So the first thing we had to do was make that change. We had to file a correction with New York State because that's where she died. And we had to fill out the application and get all these original documents. And it took a little while for it to all settle out. But at the end of the day, he was the legitimate spouse. So the birth certificate, the death certificate was corrected. We received it and ready for the next step. Now, this client decided to file the marriage petition on his own at that point. Again, that's totally fine, and everyone can do it by themselves if they want. Again, I recommend having a lawyer, but when there's money issues, like you want to save it for the adjustment of status part, great. So that's what he ended up doing. They got the marriage petition approved. They got married in 2019, got the marriage petition approved. And then he came to us to do the adjustment of status part. And that's to get the green card. So in order to do that, we had to submit proof of both marriages, proof that the first marriage ended with the death certificate, the marriage certificate, even though some of this stuff was already submitted. And some of the stuff I'm going to say that we used as part of the application package, we didn't necessarily have to, but I didn't do their marriage petition filing, so I don't know how good their marriage petition evidence was. And when you file the I-130, which is the marriage petition, in what's called a two-step process instead of a one-step, so you file the marriage petition first, then you file the green card application, you don't always have an interview. That's because the interview comes with the green card application. So they also tend to accept less bona fide marriage evidence from the beginning, but it doesn't mean that that's all you have to do to prove you have a real marriage. So, and that again, this is another thing that if you go by the instructions, you might not necessarily know, but whenever we file an application in this manner, I say to the client, I want all your marriage evidence. I want all the proof that you have a real marriage. We are going to submit it again. Even if you tell me you submitted it, that's because things get lost in the file, number one. Number two, you're putting the doubt, like you're taking the doubt out of their mind that your marriage is real in any sense, if there's any sense left. And three, your obligation continues. You still have to prove that the person, the U.S. citizen that you married, and the U.S. citizen has to prove that they married you, not for you to get a green card, but because you love each other and you want to share life together. So what we did was we again submitted the U.S. citizen's U.S. passport, as well as the I-130 approval notice, marriage certificate, death certificate, all that stuff. Again, in case something got lost, and just to make it easier. I tell people all the time, USCIS has so many applications coming across their desk. Anything you can do to make their lives easier makes your life easier. So then we also submitted additional evidence of eligibility of a good faith marriage. So that evidence included a joint lease, apartment lease, a joint utility bill, joint car insurance, joint bank account, joint life insurance, affidavits from a friend, the affidavit of support from the petitioner. We also had a joint sponsor affidavit of support. And of course, the identity information for the beneficiaries, such as passport, I-94, visa, birth certificate, and all translations for anything not in English. Now, before they got called in for the interview, we got a request for evidence. And if you've seen any of my previous notable approvals where I talk about requests for evidence and how much I hate them and try to avoid them, I just get frustrated because I want things to go as quickly as possible. All things considered, this case went really quick in 7 months, even with the request for evidence. Now, when the client gave me his birth certificate, it was cut off, like part of the top and part of the bottom. And I said to him, look, you need to go get, can you bring me the original? Because you don't have to submit the original with the package. You bring it to the interview. Can you give me the original so I can make a better copy of this? And he said, I don't have it. And I was like, well, I think they might reject it. And even if they don't reject it, you need the original for the interview. So you might as well go get the original now. Hold, Bailey. Hey, Bailey, come on. Sorry, I'm doing this from home. That was my dog getting into trouble as usual. Anyways, so I told him, as I always do, I try to always avoid any problems, but also keeping in mind, like, look, you're going to need this anyway. Why don't you just go? I know you can't go back to Ivory Coast right now, but call up your family and friends. Tell them to get you another original, mail it in. We'll get it translated again, and then we'll send it in. It won't be a problem. You'll have the original for the interview. Well, he didn't want to do that. He wanted to just get it out as quickly as possible. And I'll tell you a little secret at the end about why I know a lot of clients always want to get things out as soon as possible, but it can work to your advantage sometimes when it doesn't. And I'll get to that little secret at the end. So I said, all right, you're the boss. You want me to send it out? I'm sending it out, but I'm telling you, we might have a problem. And you still, and I would do this now before you forget, go get a new birth certificate. So lo and behold, in July, we get a request for evidence for his birth certificate. Now, it wasn't clear from the request for evidence if USCIS was saying you didn't submit a birth certificate at all, or the one you submitted was not sufficient. Like, because it had the general language about submitting a birth certificate. It could have been either. They could have just, because we've gotten plenty of requests for evidence for birth certificates that we have submitted that were valid and were frustrating. But in this case, it didn't indicate which one either way. But again, I wasn't surprised because I won't send and cut off documents unless the client refuses to get me something else and says, I understand this might delay it, send it in. So I did. So he got another original, we got it translated. I made sure nothing was cut off, mailed it in. He had his interview a week ago. They were granted same day, very, very quickly, considering all of the back and forth with this birth certificate thing. No issues with the death certificate, of course, because we fixed it in advance. And even if we fixed it, I should say, even if we fixed it after the fact, like our client tried it himself, like to file himself, and before fixing the death certificate, then we would still be able to fix it, but then there might be cause additional issues with USCIS for no reason. That's why you want to try to fix these problems before USCIS is like, hey, you got a problem. One thing that was a little annoying, not annoying, look, anything granted in 7 months, A-okay with me, A-okay with the client, but the work permit and travel document approval literally got approved the same day. Like, I honestly, it's approved by different offices, so I know how it can happen, but it's taking them a lot longer. It used to take about like 4 or 5 months to get your work permit, an advanced parole travel document. Now, 7-8 months, it's looking a little bit more like that. I have another client also who has their interview on Thursday, who he just got his work permit and travel document. So look, good news is you get your green card, you don't need those things. Also keep in mind, even if you're like, why did I even bother doing this? Well, you might have your green card interview. It doesn't mean you're going to be approved that day. I have clients who could wait years for the approval after. Why? Sometimes it's because they want another interview. Sometimes you get lost in the pile somewhere, and every other reason in between. That's the best I could say about that. But the secret I wanted to say at the end of this is that because we delayed sending his application a little bit, because I was like pushing the client to try to get me that birth certificate with that wasn't cut off before we sent it, and he was getting all frustrated with us. Well, guess what ended up happening? To his 2 years of marriage with his wife was November, I think 29th or something. And I think his green card interview was December 7th or 8th around. So his interview ended up being after they were married for 2 years, just by a week about. And because of that week, he got a 10-year green card instead of a 2-year green card, which means in 2 years, he does not need to file an I-751 petition to remove conditions on residency to get his 10-year green card. And he is still eligible to get his citizenship in 3 years, but that removes a huge step of the process. That's a really stressful step that right now that I-751 application is taking USCIS like 2 years minimum to process. So, I always say everything happens for a reason, but I always tell my clients, look, I know you want things out right away, but delays aren't always bad on our end. And that wasn't even really on our end. I think we were waiting for a few other things, but when I push you to get me something, to get me the right stuff, it's to help you, not to hurt you. But overall, the bottom line is client, he has his green card. He's very happy. We're very happy for him and his wife because even though this part only took 7 months, this entire immigration process for him has been going on for quite some time. And it is quite the relief to finally get it all taken care of. So that is all today for notable approvals. Don't forget to like us and follow us wherever you get your notable approvals and wherever you watch us. Don't forget to share this if you know someone who might find it helpful or you found it helpful yourself. I will be back as soon as I possibly can with another one because honestly, my list right now is pretty long. This one I just thought was a very interesting issue. I wanted to get out there and get this issue to people's attention. But I got some other good ones that we're going to get to as soon as possible. If I don't get to you before the holidays, I know we've had Happy Hanukkah to my fellow Jews out there and anyone celebrating any other holidays this holiday season. If I do not have another notable approval by then, I wish you all very happy holidays and a happy new year. And we will be back either before then or after then. Either way, stay safe with your travels and enjoy time with your family and friends and your adorable yet troublemaking animals or pets. Take care, everyone.